Hello and welcome to Precon Decon, the video series where I deconstruct the pre-constructed decks of Magic the Gathering's history. In this video we are going to continue our look into the prophecy theme decks, so we're going to look at Slither, which is a red and green deck. Let's look at the deck list. So we have 22 creatures, we have 6 enchantments, 3 sorceries, 4 instants, 1 artifact, 24 land, mana curve off to the side there. Let's get into it. So, this deck has a weird theme. So Prophecy had this weird mechanic theme of mostly on red cards where it really punished you for having untapped lands. So you were sort of being asked to basically be perfectly on curve every turn to get the most benefit out of like some of your creatures. So slight. This is actually, these cards have actually, I think, gotten a tiny bit better as time has gone by, just because back in the day when this set was released, mana burn was a thing, which is like if you got mana and you didn't spend it by the end of the phase, I think you took damage equal to the amount of mana that you hadn't used. Whereas now that's not been a rule for God, like 12 years. Yeah, because it was M10 that introduced that rule. God, it's been 12 years since M10. Oh my God, I'm so old. Anyway, yeah, so like now, all these creatures that say, oh, if you have no untapped lands, you can just tap out and be fine. Like, oh, I've got no untapped lands now, and there's no risk because I don't take mana burn. But at the time, that would have been potentially like a choice you would have had to make. So let's look at some of these 3 red creatures here that sort of care about having no untapped lands. So Keldon Berserker is 4 mana for a 2/3. If it attacks and you have no untapped lands, he gets +3/+0. That's quite expensive for what he is really. Scoria Cat is 5 mana for a 3/3, but becomes a 6/6 if you have no untapped lands. That's not terrible. That's all right. And then Spur Grappler, who is a 2/1 for 3, that is bad, but it becomes a 4/2 if you have no untapped lands. That's okay. Yeah, but Scoria Cat is probably the best out of all those, and that is saying something. So one of the rares of the deck is Latula, Keldon Overseer, who is 5 mana for a 3/3. You spend X red, tap, discard 2 cards. And she does X damage to target creature or player. So she is one of these legendary spell shapers. So she has a bigger, more impressive effect, which is why she needs 2 cards. I kind of wish they just kept it at 1 card. Like, it's fine. Like, you're already limited by the fact that she's legendary and more expensive. Like, it would have been fine just to have that effect be 1 card, just to throw out a blaze, because that's essentially what her effect is, just to do blaze. But yeah, and also it being X lets you tap all those lands, so you have no untapped lands to turn your bad creatures into mediocre creatures. Then we have some green creatures, which I guess still follow that theme of tapping all your lands. So Munga Worm, 4 mana for a 6/5, no trample, anything, just a big 6/5. You can't untap more than 1 land during your untap step. That is obviously horrible. It's just awful. A little side note, because I get these card images of Gatherer, and like for these older cards, like some which I didn't really have much experience like playing at the time. I like looking at comments and like seeing what, because like on Gatherer that used to be a thing. There used to be community comments, and that hasn't been a thing in ages. But yeah, some people get weirdly defensive about this creature, like going, "Oh, this would have been fine back in the day," and like, "Oh, players these days, they're spoiled because there's power creep and stuff." Like, no one would have played this card. Like, that's just a horrible drawback. Like, it is not worth it. A 6/5 for 4 mana is not worth it if it is limiting you to 1 land being untapped each turn. That's just horrible. And yeah, you're deluding yourselves, people in the Gatherer community comments from 10+ years ago. But yeah, just a horrible card. Definitely would have been one of the first things stripped out. 4 Silt Crawler. It's 3 mana for a 3/3, which is like okay for the time, but when it comes to play, tap all your lands. I mean, like, honestly, I feel like that's such like a minimal drawback, because like, I guess you would just play it after you've played other things, I guess. Play it in like your second main phase, I guess. But yeah, still not great, obviously. Because I mean, you do that, you cast it, and then you've got no mana open to do stuff during your opponent's turn, which is, I think, one of the strengths of Magic, that you can, you can do stuff during opponent's turns and interact with them that way. But yeah, Squallmonger has cropped up a lot in these green theme decks in Masks block. Weird. I think it might have been the only Monger that's shown up. I don't recall seeing any of the others in any of these decks. That's weird. Yeah, 2 Squallmongers. It's a way of using your mana, I suppose, so you have no untapped lands. And Chimeric Idol is the other one, where it's 0, tap all lands you control, and becomes a 3/3 artifact creature until end of turn. I think this deck could have used another one of him, just because like tapping all your lands to make your creature stronger is obviously the theme. Could have used another one of him. I think I would actually rather another one of him instead of the Munger Worm, because that thing that thing can just get in the bin. So we have 2 Vine Trellises. Probably would have appreciated seeing 4 of these, just because, if you're tapping your lands to benefit your creatures, mana dorks like Vine Trellis are a way around that, because then you've still got mana open, but it's from creatures. So probably would have been better to have like 4 of them. Vintara Snapper is a 2/2 for 2 with Shroud, which is, it's okay, I guess, for the time. But it only has Shroud as long as you have no untapped lands. So, yeah, there's a theme. Stampede Driver is actually a pretty decent spell shaper. Discard a card, give your whole board +1/+1 trample until turn. That's okay. And Zerapar Minotaur, who is 2 colors and 2 red for a 3/3 first strike, but doesn't have first strike all the time, because your opponent can pay 2 mana to make it lose first strike till end of turn. And that's pretty sucky. You potentially block, thinking like, right, well, my 3/3 is going to kill that creature and I'll be safe. Like, your opponent will be like, nope, your creature doesn't do the thing that you would want it to do. So no, it's I just really don't like Prophecy Design. This would have been fine instead if it was like a 3/3 and you paid to give it first strike. At least then it does what you want it to do. Whereas so much of this is just like all your card, like just stuff like this. Your cards have inbuilt drawback that like your opponent has control of, and I just think that's really just bad. Anyway. Barbed Field, 2 colors and 2 red for an aura that goes on a land. Enchanted Land has tap. This land deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So that's a way of tapping your land, I suppose. Turns a land into a Prodigal Sorcerer. At least, actually then the damage is from a colourless source, so not many things would have been protected from it. But it is still only 1 damage, and it is for a 4-mana aura, and it does tie up one of your lands, so... I'm not saying it's great or anything. It's just it's fine. It's mediocre. Citadel of Pain, 2 colors and red for an enchantment. At the end of each player's turn, Citadel of Pain deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of untapped lands they control. So I guess this is there to punish like blue players, I suppose, who are leaving mana open for counter spells. I guess. This really shouldn't hurt your stuff or hurt you because like you're trying to tap out all your lands, so it doesn't affect you. This is now a card that has gotten weaker over time because now mana burn isn't a thing. So if someone's gonna, if they don't want to leave mana open on their next turn and be like, oh, I'm gonna take some damage from Citadel of Pain, I'll just tap all my land. It's fine. Yeah. Chiron Negotiations, 2 colors, 2 red for an enchantment. Tap an untapped creature you control. Chiron Negotiations does 1 damage to a target player. I remember, this is really off tangent because it's the only interesting thing I have to say over this card. I remember getting to like a really big argument with a friend back in the day when this card was new, where they kept misreading it. It said like they were reading it as tap and untap a creature you control, and just like I was arguing, like firstly it doesn't say that, and secondly that's obviously an infinite combo and that's dumb. But they're like, no, I can just like get 1 creature out and it's an instant win, and just like oh my god. That's the only interesting thing I can say about that card, is that it made it was the cause of a 15-minute argument over telling someone to read the card properly. And then War Cadence, enchantment, X mana, and 1 red. A creature can't block this turn unless the control pays X for each blocking creature. It's another use to tap all your land, so your creatures are slightly better. 2 Seal of Fire, so 1 red mana, enchantment, sacrifice it, does 2 damage to a creature player. Talked about the seals a lot, I'm not going to repeat myself again, but yeah, these are fine. Flame Shot, 4 mana that does 3 damage divided you choose amongst any number of target creatures, which is a little expensive, but you can discard a mountain instead of paying its mana cost. So, discarding a mountain to do 3 damage amongst potentially kill 3 creatures, I think that's not awful. That's okay. On the subject of awful, though, Rhystic Lightning, because it's a Rhystic spell, 2 cards in a red. It does 4 damage to target creature or player unless that creature's controller or that player pays 2. If they do, Rhystic Lightning only does 2 damage. Yeah, it's a Rhystic spell. I just think they're very bad. I've talked about them a lot in these prophecy themed decks. It is really making looking at these like quite a slog because they're just very bad, and it just makes me very frustrated because I just think the design of them is very bad. 1 Desert Twister destroys a permanent, fine. 2 Invigorate, seen Invigorate a lot, +4/+4. You can have an opponent gain 3 life instead of paying the cost, which is good, I think. And Reverend Silence, if you control a forest, you can have each other player gain 6 life instead of paying its cost, destroy all enchantments. Yeah, yes. At least there's way. I suppose you've got all these things which are making you tap all your lands to, because that's what the deck wants you to do. It wants you to curve out perfectly, I guess. Have no untapped lands, but at least then it's these spells that you can still cast for their alternate cost, I suppose. So it could have been. Yeah. I really don't know what to say. Like the selection of cards that could have potentially got in is quite weak. Belby's Armor is from Nemesis. It's just another repeatable X effect, so you can sink mana into it, so you don't have untapped lands. Squirrel Wrangler. This could have been quite spicy. I think 2 colors, 2 green for a 2/2 druid. 1 cost 1 green, sacrifice a land. Put 2 squirrels into play. 1 cost 1 green, sacrifice a land. All your squirrels get +1/+1 turn. So this could definitely have been in place of Mungerworm, because Mungerworm is just so bad. Like your deck is actually weaker for having it in it, I think. Yeah, this could have been instead of the Mungerworm, and it has, I guess, some sort of horrible synergy. You could sacrifice your lands, and then can't have untapped lands if you've got no lands. I guess. Taskmage Assembly could have been another potential. This 2 cards in a red for an enchantment. When there's no creatures in play, you sacrifice it, being paid 2, and it does 1 damage to a creature. But any player can play that ability. So make your does your opponent want to do this? You don't want to give them an ability that kills your own stuff, but it's fine, I guess. Again, it's another sink for mana. And Verdant Field. Actually surprised this wasn't in here because this synergizes again quite well. In the same way as Barbed Field, it's an aura that goes on a land, and you tap it, and this one only gives +1/+1 to end of turn, which is a fairly weak effect, but it gets a land tapped, I suppose. So I don't know. So in summary, I think this is probably the worst of the prophecy decks. I think just because the theme is quite unfun. Because a lot of those creatures those red creatures are costed, I think, as if assuming you're always going to have untapped lands. And when you have untapped lands, yeah, they're costed as if you have no untapped lands. But if you do have untapped lands, then they are overcosted. Yeah, it's just I just don't think it's very fun looking at it. So many conditional abilities. It's kind of like a weak selection of creatures. Yeah, I just don't think this one's much fun at all. I don't really like it, but I could be wrong. I never really played this deck or played with these cards. So if you had this deck, let me know what changes you made to it. Did you keep Mungerworm in? I'm not judging. If you did, that's fine, but let me know. But I'll be back next time to look at the last prophecy theme deck. We can end this slog through prophecy. And yeah, but until then, thank you for watching, listening, and have a good day.